Hey everybody, welcome to Give Me a Song. I'm your host Jeff Phipps, where I bring people on to, I ask them to give me a song, they give me a song, I give them a song back, and then I bring people on to talk about the song. Today we have...
Truman Kennedy.
Hi Truman, how are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks for having me.
What do you do?
Well, I'm a musician. I play mandolin, mandola, and guitar. And just released an album last month, or in December last year, called Werewolf Mask, and that's, streaming everywhere now.
All right.
And now, a word from today's sponsors.
This summer, a new film from the producers of Ernest Go to Camp and the director of films like Oppenheimer, Interstellar, and The Dark Knight come together for a first film in a trio of films so scary that people have had to be medically revived during the film. Touch Grass, the film. They have told you for the last time. Rated R for heavy drug use, mild nudity, and fictional plants. Again, coming this summer. Get outside or deal with the consequences. Touch Grass, the film. Didn't the guy who do Oppenheimer, Interstellar, and The Dark Knight, isn't that like Christopher Nolan?
Yes,
like
I believe so.
The greatest director of all time.
I don't have a list. I haven't numbered them.
You wouldn't put him you put him in your top 5.
I mean,
right?
I liked Oppenheimer. Yeah, that was good. The Dark Knight. Yeah,
Are you a big film buff?
Not necessarily.
I kind of got that when I was like, Christopher Nolan. You're like,
yeah. Sure.
Like The Dark Knight.
That was fun. That was great. Yeah, I saw it a couple times.
Did you?
Yeah.
Are you just telling me that right now?
Yeah.
Truman.
Yes.
Tell me about your biggest accomplishment. You kind of said it, but
okay.
I have to. This is what I ask everybody who comes on. So, what has been your biggest accomplishment thus far in your musical career?
Getting my debut album out, Werewolf Mask. That took 4 years. Well, writing the oldest song on the album was written in 2016. And then I started recording it in early 2020 when I lived in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
And got some basic tracks down there, and then the pandemic happened. Mm-hmm. My wife and I ended up moving to Southeast Missouri to my family's cattle farm down there. We were trying to avoid the plague, and so literally headed to the hills and hung out with a bunch of cows and avoided people.
Did you find any inspiration hanging out with the cows?
Yeah, there's definitely. During the pandemic, I wasn't working on the record, but what I started doing was going down the rabbit hole of guitar pedals and kind of more the electric side of things. I ended up reconfiguring all of my gear, all of my setup, figuring out how all of that stuff works, how it works with electric mandolin, because not all pedals sound great on electric mandolin. It's just a different thing. But a lot of trial and error. So I was out in the middle of the woods making a big sound and not disturbing anyone except for my wife and some cattle. So
so that's pretty cool. When did you actually get a chance to sit down and actually record this? How long did that process take?
Yeah. After things died down with the pandemic, we decided to move up here to St. Louis. Another friend of mine from Arkansas, he had a studio over in Fayetteville. He moved up to St. Louis and opened up a studio. And so started getting some musicians I'd known from the Bluegrass Circle in St. Louis Bluegrass Circle. A family member, a cousin who plays drums, came in and laid the drums down. And so we started that in August of 2022, and then I sent the whole mixed and mastered, and everything was done and off to the record press by October of 24.
Okay.
And then started releasing singles online, streaming throughout last fall.
Did you make a video too?
I haven't done that yet. That's on the to-do list this year. So
cool.
Yeah.
And then so when did it officially come out on the Spotify and Apple Music?
Yeah, December 21 was the official release date for the whole album.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a good Christmas gift for yourself,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. And a lot of other people. And for next Christmas, if anyone wants to get ahead, you can find it online.
Yeah, no, well, at the end, we always let people plug. So it's a perfect time to, to get your shout outs.
Yeah.
So I'm a comedian. Like you said, you've listened to a few of the episodes. I had a lot of comedians on here. We always talk about that first recording, the first special, the first whatever it is, that milestone, and you build up. And then for you, you started, you were writing songs in 2016. You were recording before the pandemic. You kind of set everything down. You retooled yourself. And a lot of my friends like retooled during the pandemic too.
Yeah.
You know, it was like came back and like I'm going to do it this way now. You know, because you had downtime. You couldn't go to places. You know, like there were still open mics in St. Louis, believe it or not. Like I'll just tell you that now. And like a lot of people, it'd be funny because everybody would, you know, people would. They wouldn't let everybody come, so it was like they'd tell you in advance if you were on the open mic or not, which was really nice because then you didn't have to leave your house and go hang out at the club. Yeah. But then it would be like a week later. It's like somebody posts in our like there's a comedy forum for St. Louis on the Facebook group basically, and it would be like I got COVID. You need to go get tested. Yeah. And so like there'd be and then three or four other people would be like I got COVID. Yeah. And then there's some people who never came back. Sure. From the pandemic, like they're just done. They no interest in coming back to comedy, just haven't done it. Like, a handful of people that have done that. So it's you talk about the going away to the California for the pandemic and then finally being able to record. But you, like I said, you had all these songs. How many songs are on the album? Let's start
There's 8 songs.
8 songs. Okay. So and then how much time is it? Like
40? Right at 40 minutes. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. No more than like 10 songs and like 45 minutes.
Yeah. That's my
philosophy. Although then people put out then the Weeknd puts out like 2 albums and it's like 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think on the a vinyl album can hold like 44 minutes max, about 22 minutes per side. So
and you did press vinyl, which you have with you, which we're gonna get a picture of for the podcast. This is kind of fascinating, and it's like. Have you already started writing for the next one, or are you just kind of like celebrating this one?
Yeah, there were a few songs written during the pandemic. I've got a couple more since then. It was really just focusing on getting this album done. Yeah, has been my main musical focus. I got a lot of guest players on the album, and so just building it. Track by track, layer by layer. There's a whole lot going on this album.
That's awesome.
We've got everything from saxophones to synthesizers, and and a lot of different styles of music. So
that's really cool. But you set some aside, and you said we'll get to these later. Is that kind of like your thinking on it?
There were a couple more that were kind of on the bubble for this album, but basically everything I laid down in Little Rock. Was the basis for it. Those were the 8 songs that I had started. I had bass, guitar, mandolin, and vocal, just kind of scratch track for the guitar and the vocal. Had a few guest players in Little Rock as well. But the bulk of the album was finished up here in St. Louis.
How does that? You have guest players, you have session musicians on your album, I'm assuming. How does that work in terms of like? You just cut them a check for like a couple $100 or something, or like are they like it's like thank you, I'll be on your record, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, definitely. I believe everyone should be paid for their talent, and we work out an agreement, and try to be fair about that. And then I send everyone a copy of the record. Yeah. So there's. I don't know, a dozen or more people who played on the record, and so sent all of those out, as a memento.
Yeah, no, because like in comedy, it's like usually, if you're doing something like that, you're kicking money to people and stuff like that. It's like you're making sure your friends are taken care of, because usually it's a very friend-driven business in comedy, so it's like you always talking to people and helping each other out and scratching each other's back as best as possible. Like I run it. We're here in Margaritas in Belleville, which is where we filmed the show now, and like right there is the stage. And so like this weekend I had a comedy show. It's like I paid talent. It's like you're gonna get paid before I get paid. And I've had a couple shows here where I've just like lost money. This hasn't gone well. Okay, so. I asked people to give me a song. Before I asked people to give me a song, I asked them whether they want to know the foundation of the podcast. If you want to know where I came up with the idea, it's the offer. You don't have to take me up on it. If you do, I'll gladly explain why. And I don't know if this part airs because my daughter edits the show. Yeah. So I don't know if she like actually puts this in or not. So we could just be talking for the sake of talking. I have no idea, but I do have to make the offer. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep tonight. Do you want to know the foundation of the podcast?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I've heard, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and some folks do. If you're really into a podcast and you listen to every episode, then you kind of hear some stuff get repeated from time to time. But that's
This would be one of those things.
for all of my fans coming into your show for the first time, they need to know. They need to know.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So one of my friends was wearing a Drive-By Trucker shirt. Are you a fan of the Drive-By Truckers?
Yeah. They're great.
I saw them open for Tom Petty.
Nice.
Here at Riverport, which is the only name for that place.
That's what I've been told.
Exactly. And they were all right. Like, I walked away, I was like, they started off really good, and then they switched singers, because, they had like 3 people. Jason Isbell wasn't in the band at this point, so that does factor in.
Right.
So I didn't hear him singing on anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I left it. I was like, they were fine. Tom Petty was amazing. Mike Campbell had a heat stroke, and they kept playing the entire time while he recovered. And then he came back and they played like another 5 or 6 songs.
Dang.
So that's awesome, you know. And it was just a great show. Had a great time. And I was like, okay, I saw the Drive-By Truckers. Mark that off the list, And then so my friend's wearing one, and I told him that exact same story. And he's like, well, no, you don't understand. He's like, you got to hear this song.
Yeah.
And we were at a Touch Tunes, which is the greatest invention of mankind. And that's it. Nothing else. Not the microwave, not the stove, not the wheel. I don't care. It's Touch Tunes.
Yeah.
And he was like, you got to hear the song. So he plays the song, and I was like, oh, no, that's a pretty good song. If I would have heard that, I would have walked away with a higher opinion of the Drive-By Truckers.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you're going to do that, I got to play you one.
Okay.
And then so it was like, okay, well, here's, a song by my favorite band. And then that was it, end of conversation. Later on, I was like, I could talk to people about these songs, that's it.
Yeah.
And then I always joke that, being a comedian, we're legally obligated to have a podcast within 3 to 5 years of being a comic,
Sure.
or you lose your license to do comedy.
Yeah.
And they will just physically remove you off stage. So this was it. I was like, give me a song, simple idea, simple name. I'm a simple person.
Yeah.
And we go from there. So I asked you to give me a song. What was the name of the song, and who was it by?
The song is How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live?
Yes.
Originally written by blind Alfred Reed about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But I first came to the song through...
Hold
okay,
on.
all right, I'll slow down.
I got it.
Slow down.
So this is the scene in the movie where we'll play the song.
Yeah.
Podcast, not a movie, obviously. But we play the song real quick. We play like a little clip, but we want you to go listen to the entire thing. So not to cut you off, but this is the point in the show where people go listen to the song. And then when we transition to my song, you'll go listen to it then. That way when you come back, you have a good understanding of the song, and you kind of understand what's going on. So, how did you find this song?
So, I came across Ry Cooder. It was in 2011, and had, when I went to college, we get high-speed internet for the first time. I grew up in a rural area.
Yeah.
We had very slow dial-up, and so, all the crimes I committed on Napster were very few compared to, what other people were doing in the cities with a T1 connection or whatever they had at the time.
Right. We had so you're talking about that. I got internet. We got cable internet in like 97.
Wow.
And then like MP3s came out in like 98.
Uh-huh.
So by like middle of 98, I had like basically what Spotify has now.
Yeah.
Like just a ridiculous amount of music.
Wow. Yeah.
To the point where I was just like deleting tracks. I was like, I don't need this anymore. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Nothing for posterity's sake. It was like, and then albums started getting like stolen out of the plant and then ripped onto the internet. So it was like, I stopped buying music like overnight.
Right.
Which basically crashed the,
as a working musician now, I'm paying the price for all the music I ripped back in the day.
And the funny thing about that is like Metallica was like, you people, like they were so mad.
Yeah.
And everybody made fun of them.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, you millionaires, and you're bitching about that. They were so right about everything.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that it hurt more than anything else was musicians who can't play live, but they're incredible musicians, or they don't want to play live. The whole idea of like a concept album has gone the way of the dodo.
Well, the Beatles quit playing live at some point.
They had to, because like they didn't have the technology to hear themselves play.
Right.
The crowd was so loud they couldn't hear anything. Like there was like a story one time that they literally just played like Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
They were just they would just play whatever because it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because nobody could hear them or anything else. So there was bands who quit playing live, and the Beatles did fine without playing live.
Sure. But you could make money off selling records back then.
Yeah, right, exactly. You can make that. So you were stealing everything off the internet, allegedly.
And I get to college, and suddenly we have these high-speed internet connections, and I had my external hard drive with hundreds of megabytes at the time, just a ton of space to hold all these MP3s. And so we're trading music all the time with the friends I met there, and so somehow Ry Cooder ended up on my hard drive.
Okay,
I really don't know where it came from, but one day, it was still a few years later, I listened to his album he did with Ali Farka Touré, who's a Malian desert blues African guitar player.
Okay.
That's the one I really listened to first. It was cool. It's really just atmospheric and ambient, and so I'd put that on the study too. And then, but later I started listening to another song, Tamp 'Em Up Solid, came up just randomly one day, and that one just got my attention, and I was like, I need to listen to everything else he's done. And so that's what started collecting. I've got a bunch of his stuff on vinyl now, and become just
so this is like
huge,
your favorite guy now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
No, that's good. I like people, like I always say this on the podcast, it's like I really like when people give me stuff that has meaning to them, or somebody who's important to them. Like I really don't want like somebody to half-ass this. You know what I'm saying? Because I really want to have like a deep conversation. So this is the guy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be honest. I hadn't heard this song before.
Yeah.
I took some notes. And one of the things I want to say is just like you said, this was written 100 years ago, right? 1929 is what so we're coming up on the 100.
Okay.
Year. Yeah. This song came out in 1970. It was timely in 1970.
Yeah.
It's timely, literally right now.
Yeah, it hasn't aged.
It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't aged a bit. It was reworded or reworked, I guess, a little bit. But this song is crazy because it's just like the second I heard it, I was like, okay, this is a song from the '70s. I didn't know exactly when because I just get the link.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this song was written in the '70s. That makes sense. Start listening to it for 5 seconds. I'm like, yeah, this is this is everything they people complain about. It's like. He talks about groceries specifically.
Yeah.
And it's like all we're debating about anymore is the price of eggs on everything.
Right.
So it's like,
and he's going after, the doctor. So, our healthcare prices are through the roof.
Right.
It just everything else, the lyrics you printed off here from the original version, there's, I know I've listened to the original version at least once or twice. It's a very different style.
Yeah.
Ry Cooder, that was kind of his thing, always interpreting these old songs. He used to trade records with his mailman when he was a kid.
That's awesome.
And so he learned all this old music, old Americana music. And so that's been most of his career, just reinterpreting or giving platform to a bunch of different Americana musicians from Flaco Jimenez from Mexico, the Buena Vista Social Club from Cuba, the African artist I mentioned earlier. He has an album with an Indian artist, South Asian. So that's kind of been his thing for most of his career. He's got a few different iterations too. But
absolutely. There's such there's so many timely things though. But and it's funny too, like genuinely funny. Like he's like I got a grocery bill. And I feel like I have to write out my will.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like, it like I said, it works so much for the times. He's from LA, which worked here. Another thing that was interesting to me, I tell people this I can play guitar very poorly, but I took lessons for a while, and they taught me how to read music. So I don't know if you can read music. A lot of people who've come on who are musicians, they're like, no, I can't. But the first thing I noticed that this isn't a major major key. And so I looked it up. It's in B major.
Okay.
B sharp major or whatever, however you say it.
I play it in A.
Yeah. So you do play this.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like a bright, uplifting tone.
Yeah.
And that's why I knew it was like the 70s. My dad used to listen to Dr. Hook.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another similar sound, like, and nothing comes out like that anymore. It's like an occasional pop track. Even pop tracks, it's like, G, C, D or whatever. And then, and then most of like alt rock is just all the minor keys. Everything's depressing. But this is kind of funny that like this is like a major key, which is a happier sound.
Sure.
And then the most dissonant life sucks.
Yeah.
Everything's going to hell in a handbasket type of lyrics, which is just I loved it because it's kind of like let's have this bright song about how nobody can get by. And then again, this was in the 70s, and you're just ending like the 60s. You just had Woodstock. You're in the middle of the Vietnam conflict. So like young guys are just going off to war and dying. Like we lost 300,000 soldiers in the Vietnam conflict. They don't call it a war anymore. Because it wasn't even like a war.
Police action.
Yes, the police action of Vietnam. Yeah. Oh man, but we got Rambo out of it.
Sure.
So like that's a victory. 300,000
Platoon. So many other.
We've got so many. There's some movies.
Apocalypse Now. Come on.
That's not even. It's like it is a Vietnam movie, but it's like the most like least connected to Vietnam movie like on the planet.
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket. There's your.
And MASH could have won all those Emmys without Vietnam.
Well, doesn't MASH take place during the Korean War though?
Yeah, but it's airing during Vietnam.
That's true.
So
it is. Yeah. Right. Roy Cooter is also a movie. He does soundtracks and stuff like that. So I have actually. So I went down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
I'm a big.
You're the movie guy, so you.
I am a movie guy. So Trespass I saw in the theaters. Brewster Millions. I didn't know I don't know who does soundtracks.
Right. Sure.
I do. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. I usually don't care unless it's interesting. But Brewster's Millions is like. Have you seen Brewster Millions?
Maybe.
Oh my god! You got to go watch. So. Brewster Millions is like one of like those foundational comedies for me as a kid. Richard Pryor inherits $3 million.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And he has to spend it in 30 days.
Okay.
In order to get $300 million.
Okay.
So and then he can't have anything to show for it at the end of 30 days.
So he's got to give it all away.
No, he has to spend it.
Okay, he has to spend it.
So he can't give it away. He has to have receipts for everything.
Yeah.
So he buys like the world's most expensive stamp and he mails it.
Yeah.
So like that's like one example.
Okay.
And then the accounting firm knows that like if he doesn't complete this, that they get the $300 million. So they're trying to like screw with him the entire movie.
I've seen this. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just for him to have done the soundtrack. And I couldn't tell you pieces off of it or anything like that. But it's just kind of funny, like this intersection here of like things that I love, and then this. So. What are some other good songs by Roy Cooter? So is this the song or are there others that are like,
I mean, I always tell people when they're getting into Ry to start with his first album, the self-titled album, and work forward.
Yeah.
Because he is going to change styles from album to album. He's going to change producers. So his sound is going to shift, and it's kind of good to listen to where he starts from and to where he's going.
Yeah.
Unless you're already a fan of a particular style of music and you know that album is geared toward that style. Like he has a jazz album which he famously hated. But
so he recorded an album and he's just like, why did I do this?
Yeah, he hates that one. Yeah. There's also
Is it a decent album?
Yeah, I mean I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite in his lineup, but is
he singing on or is he playing too?
Yeah, he's singing a little bit. It's more instrumentals though, for sure. But yeah, just going through his discography in chronological order is what I always recommend.
Yeah. Jazz is such an interesting form of music in terms of how it affects pop music. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like the drummer from the Police was a jazz musician. Was a jazz drummer. So he brought that sound to the Police.
Right.
And
I'm a former jazz drummer.
Yeah, so you know some of these. Neil Peart of Rush is another one who had a foundation in jazz. So you have like these. It's a different style completely.
Yeah.
Like they hold, you hold the stick like a normal rock and roll drummer holds the stick like this. They hold it like this way. which won't make any sense on the if you're just listening to the podcast, but like chopsticks.
Traditional grip versus matched grip.
Right, yeah.
That's what we're talking
holding
about.
it almost like chopsticks.
Yeah.
It would be the visual
Kinda,
to help you out. So, yeah, I know it's not exactly like that, but it's very similar to that. But you get that different styling, you get a different rhythm out of that,
Sure.
And it's just interesting that, he decided to go make a jazz album.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it helped him in his career afterwards, but maybe during the process he's just like, I really don't like jazz like this. It's like being a comedian and they become like a writer, you know, and so like Mitch Hedberg would always joke about that. I don't know if you listen to Mitch Hedberg.
Oh yeah.
So he had a story about that. He's like I go to Hollywood and all they want me to do is write.
Mm-hmm.
He's like I'm a chef, but all you want me to do is farm.
Yeah.
That was his like analogy with it,
Yeah.
which I just think is a good analogy for that kind of thing. It's like they're making food, but one's not making one's not presenting the food. It's like growing the food, that kind of thing. So I think jazz and rock and roll, like, there's not a lot of overlap really at the end of the day.
I mean, there can be everything.
Yeah.
Music flows in a linear fashion. So every all the music that we're creating today is drawing upon all the music that has been recorded in the past.
Yeah. You wouldn't consider it secular? You would do secular? Like because you're like, you're coming back to these ideas and like what's in fashion now. So like,
I mean, there's a cycle of trends.
Yeah.
That is mainly dictated by the mainstream, or if something catches on, we have viral content now. If something catches on like that, it'll be quickly latched onto by the powers that be in the music industry, and then amplified, and then everyone will try to copy that hit because that's
so like bluegrass is like something. So like you're like in a genre that is like more popular now than it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
like you had the viral guy from like West Virginia or whatever who had the bluegrass song like a year ago or 2 years ago, and I can't think
Oliver
of
Anthony Oliver.
And it was kind of like just timely is a good way to put it. And bluegrass can be very timely, and a song like this is always timely.
Yeah, we got Billy Strings now, just like bringing in a new generation, and that keeps happening. About when I started, my dad's been playing bluegrass forever, and around junior high when I started playing drums and band, my musical appreciation started expanding, and I finally got bluegrass, because bluegrass, when it's operating correctly, it's also operating like a jazz band. As the players are listening to each other, they have rhythm. They have rhythm parts, they have melody parts, they have riff parts. So in that way, there's extended solos. So as those types of music relate to one another, that's when I kind of clicked in. I'm like, okay, bluegrass is great. I like this, and started playing mandolin at the same time, and coincidentally, that's when "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" came out. So that brought in kind of the millennial generation, and so now you have Billy Strings bringing in Gen Z, and a bunch of different folks. It's always multi-generational,
and that's
too.
Another 20 years ago. Then, keeping with that whole like 20
years. Nickel Creek and Alison Krauss, kind of in the 90s and 2000s as well, contributing a lot to the millennial generation. And then going back, you have like Flatt and Scruggs doing the theme to Beverly Hillbillies, or they're playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown in Bonnie and Clyde from the 70s, and so that sort of thing. That was another generational push for bluegrass music.
But you have people who go back and maybe it's not maybe bluegrassy per se, but you're drawing from that foundation of these old folk songs that just hold up so well. I mean, like I said, this could have been written yesterday and I'd have bought it.
Lyrically, for sure.
I would have said, that sounds perfect. It's like I don't want to eat eggs anymore. Like, I do, because I enjoy them. So I asked people. I asked people to give me a song, and then the only way that I can, kind of like interact, it'd be one thing if it'd be a one-sided conversation if I just said, you give me a song and then we talk about it and then you go away. So I was like, okay, well, like I said, you're going to give me a song, I'm going to give you one. And we're going to talk about both of them.
All right.
We're not going to pound the table because we're not doing that anymore.
Not doing that.
So I did want to tie this together. I always go, it's a weird process. It's not an exact science here at Give Me a Song on what song I give people. So I don't know if you thought there was like an exact science, There really isn't.
I was wondering what. Okay, so
you're wondering. Perfect.
Yeah.
First off, what is the song that I gave you?
You gave me "Hurt" by Nine Inch Nails.
I gave you, and specifically, and I made a point to saying this. I gave you the Nine Inch Nails version of this song. Okay.
Hurt myself today to see if I still feel I focus on.
So I gave you "Hurt" by Nine Inch Nails. The connection that I made, there was a lot of connections I made. One, that your song was a cover. And "Hurt" this is the original version.
Right.
But the Johnny Cash famously recorded this version, recorded a version of this in no, I didn't write down the date, but he recorded, I think it's 2002 or 2003, somewhere in there.
Seems right, yeah.
Recorded a version of this song. And the Johnny Cash version is the more famous version of this song.
Yeah.
And it's the more well-received version. I don't know if people know that at some point down the ride, no one will know that this was a Nine Inch Nails song. Besides, like,
possibly, yeah.
But like,
yeah.
But I'm serious. Like,
yeah.
if I asked my dad, like, if he had heard "Hurt," he'd be like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Hey, have you ever heard of Nine Inch Nails?"
Yeah.
And he'd be like, "You mean the things they put Jesus on with?" And then I'd be like,
"Funny you mentioned that. I really didn't listen to this when it came out, but I remember having, because I was growing up buttoned up in the church and everything, and my mom got me a T-shirt once that was designed to look like the Nine Inch Nails logo, but it said, exactly, you know where I'm going with it?
Yes.
It said, "Jesus dealt with sin with 10-inch spikes." And I'm just like, kind of like where that whole thing in the 90s where Christian culture was like, we have to have an analog to everything that's happening in pop culture so we can be separate and pure, you know?
Yeah, there was a definitive line.
Yeah.
But it's always funny, like, Christian bands, like, if you got labeled as like a Christian band, like, that was the end of your career in terms of like 21 Pilots. I don't know how, like, true this is or isn't, but supposedly, like, they're like a Christian band, like everything, like they're not necessarily offensive,
right?
And you know they don't do a lot of religious stuff in their things, but they're not a Christian band. But they don't want you to know that, you know, like, so it's like,
it's kind of like Creed back in the day. They're like, oh, well, they're Christian. You can listen to them. I'm only listening to pop radio to hear the Creed song that comes on. Right. Mom, Dad,
and then Scott Stapp, I think that's his last name. Just did everything he could to undo everything related to being like, oh, that's fine. I'm going to become a drug addict, just a womanizer. I'm going to destroy everything so that you can't call us a Christian band, you know. And it's like, all right, man, whatever. Like, it's tough being famous. So there's two reasons.
I'll find out one day. Both of us,
hopefully both of us will.
We can come back and see how it is.
Yeah, and I'll be strung out on heroin. I'm looking forward to those days. I told my kids, or I know I told my son this, and he plays bass, and I was like, look, man, if you're going to do drugs, whatever, you know, like, don't do heroin. Like anything else.
Yeah.
Like, heroin's the one that, like, no one seems to get away from, you know, and there's so many singers, like, from the 90s, you know, like Alice in Chains, so on and so forth. Trent Reznor apparently had, like, a severe drug problem at one point.
You couldn't tell by the song.
Right. But I did choose this one because it was a cover, and two is that Trent Reznor has scored, like, all sorts of films in the last 10 years.
Right.
And so that was
I was
my
just
connection.
thinking about that on the way over, and I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, so that was...
Good job.
Thank you. Again, not an exact science, but I do take, like, some serious consideration into, like, where I want to lead a conversation. And so the overlap here is that you have, like, Trent Reznor just, like, stopped making Nine Inch Nails albums, which is, depending on how big a fan you are, I would say on, like, a scale of 5, like, maybe a 3.5 for me. Like, I like Nine Inch Nails songs, but I don't need to hear them all the time, and I don't need to hear, like, I like Trent Reznor's music. I really do. And I like this version of this song. And we'll get to that in a second, but he did the soundtrack for The Social Network, which is, like, one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, like the creation of Facebook. I was a computer science teacher. I would show them this movie, just kind of get them, like, to understand, like, how things happen sometimes, like, you know,
where society started to unravel.
I saw it, before we were kind of talking, like, the political side of things, and I was like, you know, I don't want to get too political or whatever.
Sure.
But since you mentioned that specifically, I saw a statistic or like a graph of like liberal ideology in women compared to men. So like if this is 0, this is like centrist.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so I'm just putting a flat line, horizontal line, and then like if you go up, you're more liberal, and down, you're more conservative.
Sure.
Since 2007, the creation of Facebook, men have kept slightly conservative
Sure.
as a constant line. Women, however, have just shot up more liberal.
Yeah.
Like exponentially almost more liberal than they were since 2007.
I wonder why.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I don't want to go into
Sure.
any of that.
I'll just leave it right there. I wonder why.
Right.
Huh.
You know,
Weird.
I think being able to communicate with everybody would probably be a big. Gone Girl was another one.
Oh, yeah.
Was a big film that had that.
Shot down in southeast Missouri.
Yeah,
in
it
Cape
was.
Girardeau.
Yeah. Were you living around that area at the time?
No, my aunt is in the movie.
Oh, really?
She lives around there, yeah.
And
she's in the background of, there's a funeral scene, and you can see her very, very briefly in a split second. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Watchmen, the TV show, which came out in 2019.
Right, yeah, I watched that,
which
yeah.
is it was a good show.
Yeah.
The Killer came out recently. There's a new Tron movie. Apparently, they're going to do him and Atticus. I can't think. He's got a guy who works with like exclusively together.
Okay, yeah.
And I can't think of his name right now. We'll
Yeah.
put it down at the bottom here. But they work together and they do these soundtracks.
Right.
I think this is fascinating to go from creating like popular music, the transition to creating like just soundscapes for the background of scenes.
Yeah.
Like to me, I don't understand. Like I can't make that connection in my head, right? Because it's like you have like a very locked in format for a song, right? Like any kind of song, you know, like whether you're talking country, you're talking rap, you're talking, rock and roll. There's a structure to it, you know. There's a structure for bluegrass. It's not the same as a rock structure or a rap song, but there's this locked in structure, and then you just have like this free form of, this is gonna sound like this. You know what I'm saying? Or like the Star Wars soundtrack.
Yeah, well, listening to there's another podcast that came out in the last couple of years called The Rycooter Story. It's a guy out of Germany actually, who is one weird thing about it is I don't know if it's I think about his his ability to speak English or anything, but he uses AI voices for the thing, which is a little weird at first,
that
but
would drive me nuts.
You get kind of used to it. There's some weird things here and there, but he does a good job with his research and his analysis.
Does like a bunch of research.
But yeah, he's also like he works in film production, so he's a big film guy too.
Yeah.
And so he's been going through every album, and also getting into all the session work that Rycooter did.
Yeah.
But then he's also going through every soundtrack too. So I've caught up on a lot of movies that I didn't know that he did.
No, have you been going back and watching these movies?
I've not been watching them at the same time. I've seen several of them. I've seen Long Riders. I've seen Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
And so, but he talks about Rycooter's process for those films.
Yeah.
He worked a lot with like two different directors. I'm forgetting one of them's name, but another one, Wim Wenders, however you say his name, was one of them. But they would really be hands off with him.
Yeah.
And so he would get the film after it had been edited.
Right.
And so he would just sit in a room for like a week with the film and play stuff until he felt that it was right, and then he would go in and record that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of his process for things. Yeah.
That's crazy. Like I said, you just have to get in that mindset of just like playing something.
Yeah.
And then like I guess taking
it must be
notes.
so weird. I don't know if you
Right.
can like watch versions of a film without a score, without a soundtrack on, and like how different that would be. You know, there's
it's awful. There's
it's terrible. Don't do it.
So so I watch a show. It's Red Letter Media, and they do film review.
Yeah.
So like again, a really big film guy, a really big music guy, comedy of course. Like those are kind of my big things, and video games, which is my like probably like an addiction, more than like an analysis kind of thing. But there was some Danzig film. Speaking of musicians, and Danzig tries to direct, and I say tries, and he put out this movie, and it didn't have a soundtrack, and they just let it run.
Whoa.
So it was like 5 minutes of like, there was no ambient sound because I guess he didn't know how to do it, and it was just like, It was the weirdest thing. It was like horrifying.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make your mind wants to fill in those blanks.
There should be something there.
You're
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah.
You know, so you're like, I got to have sound in the
You can
background.
hear the wind blowing at least. Yeah.
Right, none of it. So
Yeah.
they went and edited it and put in sound and everything else. And he's like, okay, well, here's what it should sound like with anything. And he's like, see the difference? And it was like, oh yeah, like they both went to film school, and then just became like podcasters. It was the weird thing. One of the guys on the show like did a 2-hour analysis of the Phantom Menace, like 2 years after it came out, on how bad it was. And he's like, here's why you don't know it's as bad as it is, but it's like actually worse than what you thought. And it made him famous. You know, like they were screening it at like film festivals, like just this analysis of, and it was great. And then they just kind of kept going with that, but somehow they stumbled across this Danzig movie, and it just god awful.
Yeah.
Some kind of western, and it just had no sound. And it's like you're Danzig, you know musicians, like grab anybody.
Yeah, right.
Hey man, you
do
wanna
it yourself.
score- right? Do it yourself. Let's not let Glenn do much. You know, he could have been Wolverine. You know, like that's
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Not necessarily.
Do you know what Glenn Danzig looks like?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Just
so everybody
from
always
appearance,
said, appearance-wise,
Yeah.
kind of like when he was younger, he looked like what Wolverine the comic looked like.
Sure.
But then you got Hugh Jackman, so it's like that's Wolverine. In my mind, that's Wolverine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's supposed to be like a 5'3" midget with like, you know, big old knives.
Okay.
But so I love movies. I love Hurt though. Is there anything about like? You revisited the song, right?
Yeah.
Before you came.
Right.
Is there anything that sticks out, like in terms of lyrics or sound, or anything that kind of sticks with you?
Yeah, I mean, just the Nine Inch Nails industrial sound. I listened to most of the album on the drive over here too, and just getting back into that. It is a lot to take in. You got to be in the right. I don't know if I would ever put that on because it's not relaxing.
No.
It is very intense. You've got to have probably a lot of manic energy to gel with that at all.
How do you feel about the song Closer?
Closer, I did, yeah. I listened to that one again.
Yeah.
Probably the first time I heard that was when it was in the Weird Al, we would do the polka mashup medley of songs.
Right, yeah.
I wanna, like an animal? You put a little sound effect in.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Very controversial, you know, something, I couldn't listen to this album at the time it came out.
Oh, yeah, I guess not.
Wouldn't have been, would have been on my radar, and I would have been 7, and playing it in the car with my, it just wouldn't have happened.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Like I had NWA's first album when I was 13.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea of the disparity. And you're not the only person who grew up in like a religious household that's been on the show who's been like, I was in this little bubble, and then when I finally got out of it, what's funny is that like when they got out of it, it was like they went on like a massive journey, but you just like went right back to bluegrass, and it's like you didn't really get that far out of the bubble. You know?
I mean, it's there are 2 strains of bluegrass. There's a very traditional strain and set of festivals and artists who play very straight laced, buttoned up, no alcohol at the festival.
Yeah.
Got to play the gospel show on Sunday morning kind of festivals. And then there's the Billy Strings. Doing butt drugs in the parking lot.
But you're still going to church on Sunday and apologizing for everything you did on the weekend before.
And there's a little in between there. Yeah.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely. Things that always, everything about this song, like all the words, just stick with you.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I always notice.
Right.
Like, he's just like, you can have it all. The way he says it's like, my empire dirt. Like he's giving it all away. Like some people like say it's like a suicide note. Yeah. And Downward Spiral.
I was wondering about that because of the big explosion at the end, and then just kind of like a flat line, for like the last minute. Yeah. I was like, is that the OD? Is that what's happening here?
The Downward Spiral is a concept album, so this would be it's the end. It's the last song on the track. Yeah. It would be fitting.
There's 2 songs about pigs.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Well, March of the Pigs is a little bit different.
Yeah, I like that one. That was cool. Yeah.
That is my favorite song off this album. I do love Hurt though. He's like, I wear a crown of shit. Yeah. And he's like, upon my liar's chair. Yeah. Like the visuals, and then you see the Johnny Cash version. You hear, like, he says a crown of thorns. Right. But the visuals in that are just so fascinating. Yeah. In terms of like where he took the song, and then in the Wikipedia notes, he was like, "This isn't my song anymore." Yeah. It's like it's Johnny Cash's. Right. It's kind of interesting that Roy Cooder, like, by all accounts, like the way he reworked that song, it's his song. You
Sure.
know, you're talking about the
Yeah.
how to. This will probably be the first time I ever say this out loud.
Yeah.
But how can a poor man stand such times and live?
Yeah.
Like it became his own. It's your song. You
Yeah.
know, like it's interesting that in comedy you can't take somebody else's words.
Yeah.
You can if you're doing like a production, you know, if you're a writer, like SNL, you know, you have writers on SNL and then you perform them.
Sure.
But if you're doing stand-up comedy, like I can't go up and do somebody else's work.
Right.
And pass it off as my
Yeah.
own. And if somebody had found out, like, and people have ghostwriters.
Sure.
There's no way Kevin Hart can put out an hour comedy special a year.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to think about that. Like,
Sure.
These are guys who, like, you know, we were talking at the beginning on, like, you build to an hour set.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You build the headline, so you start off as like a host
Yeah.
or a feature. You start off as a host.
Yeah, and
you're
Stephen
like-
King and John
Yeah.
Grisham, they also have a
Right.
whole
I
stable
don't know,
of writers.
No,
that's-
Stephen King does. Yeah, John Grisham does.
Okay.
I mean, they're like Tom Clancy would be
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah.
Of like he doesn't. One,
Sure.
he's gone, but I think he's gone. But yeah, he didn't have. Yeah, well, who knows?
Google it later.
Yeah, but the point, but it was like his name, Tom Clancy's this, and then down at the bottom would be like somebody's name.
Sure, yeah.
Because that would be the person
Yeah.
passing, you know. But you got to write in the
He
style.
he does an editorial sweep of it and then
Good
put,
enough,
put it out there. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Just keep the checks coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird that you can do that as a writer. I was thinking about that. I'm like, writers can't do that. And then you just
Yeah.
pointed out to me. It's like, yeah, like you have a factory. And
Yeah.
It's just your name on the front of the factory. And
Yeah.
like, there are comedians who do that. I don't know if Kevin Hart doesn't write his whole hour. I couldn't believe it. I don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way. If he does, like, and I ever meet you, Kevin, like, I don't know. Like, I'll
Yeah.
apologize
Right.
and just say I didn't understand.
He can
But-
come on and give me a song, and
Yeah,
you can do the
absolutely.
song thing, and you can
Yeah.
talk it out
We
and
can. I'll be
make
like,
amends.
How are
Yeah.
you getting these? How are you filming 5 movies a year and writing an hour of comedy and then performing it at in an arena and getting away with it? I don't see how you have the time.
Yeah.
Like, when would you craft these things? You know, I just don't. You
Yeah,
can't do it.
but it's very different with music, and then within genres of music too.
Yeah.
Those that come out of the folk tradition, the oral
Yeah.
tradition that are
Yeah.
passed down, you know, those, you know, we know the song. We think of the original version of the song, like the Blind Alfred Reed version of the song. Some of that is, you know. Relevant to the time, like talking about prohibition in the 20s, of
right.
course, but you can talk about drug prohibition today.
Yeah.
You know, it's still happening. So those songs that are like passed down in that folk tradition, yeah, everyone covers them. They're become like a set of standards, kind of like
Yeah.
in jazz music
Right.
too, where you can do that. And just talking about the business of it, there would be. And when our music industry was more regionalized and things were more localized, someone would have a big hit out of Houston or something, and then a major label would hear that song, get it to their big national star,
Yeah.
cut a new version of it, probably screw the original guy out of money,
Oh, absolutely.
and you know, make a big national hit of it before the little guy can
yeah,
you know,
no,
make a
I mean,
splash.
yeah, no, absolutely. You know,
So that's kind of the evil side of it. But there is, you know, when you go to a bluegrass jam, you call out the key the song is, and you get into it, and everyone knows their role, and they've heard it for the most part, because there's this canon of common music and fiddle tunes that we
Yeah.
share, that we can do it that way.
So, like, obviously, you're bluegrass. You're going to play some of the standards, but you're going to have your own original music.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, like, you know, you like a pop star? They'll get a songwriting credit, but like 99% of the time, they don't write any of their songs.
Yeah.
You know, like Britney Spears wrote next to nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like Beyonce, there's, you know, always doubt, and some people doubt whether Taylor Swift is really how, you know, she's been working with the National for the last you know, like 3 or 4 albums.
Sure.
And the guy from Fun, I can't think of his name right now.
Yeah.
Jack Adinoff, that's
Yeah.
his name. And so, like, there's a belief that those gentlemen are helping her, you know, write these songs. You
Yeah.
know, where are you at with that? So, like, you know, like I said, like half of it, like being in bluegrass, it's completely acceptable to cover, you know, standards,
Yeah.
have them on the album. Like, this is my version of this
Yeah.
song.
I mean,
know?
I'm still, you know, you still have to respect the copyright and the royalty,
Yeah.
and give that credit to them.
I'm not talking the credits so much. I'm talking more like,
if you're changing like the style and the feel and those sorts of things.
or that, and like, you know, you you're not calling yourself a singer-songwriter. You know, you'd consider yourself a singer-songwriter, and it's okay to have the standards because you do write your own original music. But I'm talking about people who are just like you know, like a Britney Spears. Like you know she's not like all she can do. Elvis, all they can do is sing.
Yeah.
They're not, like Kanye West.
I'll give them a little more credit than that, but they can dance, they can put on a show.
Okay, well, there
it's
you
a
go.
performance.
They're
there's always been entertainers and performers that have a writing team behind them, like 10 Pound Alley and that sort of thing. So that's always been a part of it.
That don't bother you?
Not necessarily. No, I mean it's just a different thing. Yeah.
See, like I said, the background with the comedy, there's like cars going by in the background. There's
the police chase in downtown Belleville.
I'm finally getting arrested. Thank God. If I get taken out in cuffs in the middle of this show, like make sure it gets out there.
Yeah, this is going to be you're going to get a lot of views.
That would be it. Guy gets it wouldn't. The title wouldn't be like the songs on this one. It'd be like gets arrested mid episode.
The cops hurt myself today.
Yeah.
Pulled me out of the bar.
Like, and then there's even a verse about that. The people getting arrested. As a comedian, as a stand-up comic specifically, like knowing that people didn't write their own stuff would just drives me bonkers.
Sure, yeah.
Like absolutely, just like how dare you kind of thing. And so for musicians, I'm always curious on like where, because like you have your like hardcore singer-songwriters who like this is my song, I wrote it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And one of the things about like Trent Reznor specifically, like Trent Reznor is 9 Inch Nails. Like there's people who like he did the whole album. He does like the entire albums. Like it's his idea, it's his vision. Yeah. Like maybe somebody will play something here and there, but for the most part, it's like written, produced. All instruments by Trent Reznor. Dave Grohl wrote the first Foo Fighter album, like completely. They played all the instruments on it. And so like. I guess it clearly doesn't bother you as it would be, but I'm always more impressed by like those people. Like, let me put it that way.
And sometimes when you do a cover, you don't have to ask for permission. But like when Weird Al does his parodies, he asks for permission of those artists because he is changing the song significantly. But he's legally allowed to do that under
parody law.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Coolio famously didn't like the Amish Paradise.
Yeah, I think they came around. I think
they came around. Yeah. I don't think he said there's like he said for both of them. Yeah. Like he said that he talked to Coolio's people and they were fine with it, and then Coolio's like,
it just didn't get back to Coolio.
They're like, go for it. Yeah. And I don't know.
Sure.
Like, it's Gangster Paradise.
Yeah. Well, and with Western music copyright, I've been listening to the podcast for several years now. A History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs. Yeah. Very well researched by Andrew Hickey out of England. Oh, okay. And so he makes the point. We're talking about Bo Diddley. Like in Western music copyright, you own the lyrics and you own the melody.
Yes.
But you don't own the rhythm is not copyrighted. Yeah. So Bo Diddley has the Bo Diddley rhythm, right? Bump, 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 a bump, bump. That's been copied in so many. Buddy Holly, Eric Clapton. They've all got songs with that rhythm. I don't know if Bo Diddley could even make a claim to it because it's kind of a Caribbean 3/2 kind of groove. But if he could have held the copyright on something like that, would he be one of the richest musicians in history? You'd almost have to give that up. Yeah, like it's like in comedy. I think there's like could you copyright the form of the knock knock joke? That would be similar to copywriting a rhythm.
But no one goes up and does 20 minutes of knock knock jokes. Sure, so it'd be a little bit different. I think.
Well, you don't do the same rhythm on every song on an album either.
Right? Yeah, exactly. In terms of comedy, you see styling. So patterns. Yeah. What people pattern themselves. Like I heard a joke yesterday. I'm not going to repeat it on it, but it was like beat for beat a Mitch Hedberg joke. And it's like this is in the style of would be the musical similarity. It's like it sounds like 9 Inch Nails, but it's not 9 Inch Nails. So it's like it was in the style of a Mitch Hedberg joke, and I was just like, it's not the same. Or there's a comedian around here who does a lot of Anthony Jeselnik style humor, which is like interesting premise and then just like crazy punchline. Okay. But then I'll take I try to avoid doing that personally, but like I'll do like styling choices, like a pause, like a pregnant pause they call it, or something like that. But like I know where I got it from.
Yeah.
I know which comedian I got it from. I know how I got it. Like that's styling. I know I'm doing it, but like I'm not. My joke structure is a little bit different, you know. And then you have like the Seinfeld style of, like there's only so many ways you can talk to somebody,
right?
You know, and go on stage and do things. So like. You're gonna adapt it. You're gonna take it from somewhere, somehow. You know, like you could do a bunch of cocaine and do Robin Williams style, and just go on stage and talk like this, and then change your voice really fast, and I'm doing this. You know, like when I was like 15, like that's all I wanted to be, like high on cocaine and doing Robin Williams. You know, and so I never did, so I never got there. But I always thought that was like the coolest style of comedy. It's like just this frantic, and I don't even move on stage. Like I do one. If I move more than a half an inch, like something's gone wrong. So yeah, I chose Nine Inch Nails Hurt. I really wanted to tie everything together in terms of like covers. I wanted to cover that. I think I wanted to talk soundtracks, which is just, like I said, fascinating to me. Like it's just such a different part of your brain as a musician. You know, like you said, you're in a room and you have the movie, and you have like you can see where everything is, and then there's no sound, like there's no music, and it's like you fill in those gaps. So I guess that would be a good exercise in terms of being like a genuine musician. Not to say you're not a musician or anything like that, but just like to cover the gambit. You know what I'm saying? Like so, like you know, somebody like Steve Martin would be a good example of like somebody who's done everything as an entertainer. Yeah, and it's like, and he's succeeded at all of it. You know what I'm saying? So like he was a stand-up comic, and he was selling out arenas, and then he put out albums while he was doing that, and then he became a bluegrass musician, you know, and then he wrote movies and he directed movies. It's kind of like, you know, it's like you really. I always say that in terms. Somebody asked me like, what do I want out of this? Like, I want it all. Like I really do. You know, it's like I do a podcast now. You know, like I do stand-up comedy. Like you know, I guess I got to write at some point. You know, it's like maybe act. I don't know. I really don't want to act. Yeah, I really. You
kind of wonder, like if Steve Martin had done it in a different order. Like would the bluegrass career would have worked out if he started there and then came to comedy later? You
Absolutely.
think so?
Oh yeah. I think he's I think he's one of one. I mean, in terms of like his impact, I don't think people will really understand like what he actually accomplished until like he's long gone. I mean, when you say it out loud, it doesn't sound like real. You know, this is a guy who started off on Laugh-In as like a sidekick, moved his way onto like a television show. Then became like part of the Saturday Night Live group, but was never like part of it. But
well, like a fun fact, you know who John Hartford is? A musician from St. Louis. I do not. He was a banjo player, fiddle player. Okay. He wrote "Gentle on My Mind," which has been covered by everybody. And so he went out to L.A. and he wrote on the Smothers Brothers show with Steve Martin. And so you've got the Smothers Brothers, Steve Martin, and John Hartford. All banjo players writing comedy for TV. It's like, how many banjo players does it take to write a network comedy show? I don't know.
Was Steve Martin playing that? He learned later, right?
No, he played back then.
Oh, okay. So, there's a really good documentary on Apple TV Plus about Steve Martin that if you haven't checked, I mean, you don't watch things, so.
I watch documentaries. I watch.
Well, there you go.
I got an Apple subscription right now. I've been watching Severance, you know.
Oh, okay. We can talk about that after. Okay. That's driving my girlfriend nuts. My fiance, soon-to-be wife. I still say girlfriend. Hopefully I won't once we're married. But, thank you so much for coming on. I really had a good time. I like learning about artists I never knew or heard of or anything like that. And like I said, such a timely song. It's just it shouldn't be. Yeah. and what's sad is it's going to be timely 20 years from now. Yeah. It's going to be time like, you know, things change and they don't change. You know, it's like life's always going to be hard for people who don't have infinite money. You know, and they say that people with infinite money don't have it hard, or they have it hard too. But I just couldn't fathom that.
And the way they're rigging things right now, they're just going to nickel and dime us. To the grave.
Well, it's all subscriptions, you know. Like we got to have a subscription to Apple TV for Severance and Steve Martin, you know. Or
they got a bill today to up bank fees, so you know your overdraft fees are going to go up. So be careful there. Great. And
that's great news. Thank you.
If you got student loans, they're going to up the monthly payment on student loans. So we're just going to hit. You know, they took away the price controls on the prescription medicines that we just put in place. So, you know, it's going up everywhere. It's going up everywhere. Yes. How can a poor man stand such time and live?
Timely song.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. What I want you to do is you're going to look at this camera here, and this is where you're going to plug your socials.
Okay.
This is where you're going to plug your album. Like I said, we're going to get a little graphic of the album, and then we'll have the links in the description below so
Sounds
people
good.
can listen.
All right.
And you tell us where we can find all of your stuff and the name of your album.
Yeah. Again, Truman Kennedy, Werewolf Mask is the name of the album. TrumanKennedy.com is my website. There's links to the socials there. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Threads. I guess I'm on Threads. Truman Kennedy Music is the handle for all of those.
Okay.
And there's a link to buy the album, buy a T-shirt, digital download. That's all on Bandcamp.
Are you
Links.
autographing them too?
I can. It's fine. Just ask for it. Send me there's
Send
no,
an email
no
while
extra
you're
charge.
buying it? Yeah.
I just got to take the shrink wrap off, so you'll get it without the shrink wrap. But it'll have a shiny black signature on it. So, and let's see what else. So the website, and then streaming everywhere: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and like 24 other platforms you've never heard of.
So speaking of all the platforms we're on, so we're at Gimme a Song. We are on YouTube is where people watch us. We are on Apple Podcasts. We're on Amazon Podcasts that no one listens to. A lot of people from Pandora have been checking out the show.
Interesting.
And then there's like another one that I was like surprised about where people are listening to the show. So it's everywhere. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get followers. We're trying to get views. We're really trying to like have real sponsors and not. Well, clearly, Touchgrass the film is a real thing, obviously. And then I'm at Jeffrey Phipps, JEFFER _Phipps PHIPPS on Instagram. I'm on Jeffrey Phipps at Facebook. I haven't switched to. I'm on Threads, obviously. And then I'm still on Twitter /X because I'm just lazy and I haven't set up a Blue Sky yet because I'm literally just lazy. I don't care.
I've got like one post on Mastodon and one post on Blue Sky.
Right, and that's what most people do. Like I'm gonna go over there and it's all gonna change. You don't. It's so hard to leave Twitter. But thank you so much for coming. I know we'll talk about it off there. Anyway, here's what we say every time we leave: tell your friends, tell your pets. And have a great day, and thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.